Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Oceans of Slumber, Where Gods Fear to Speak, out September 13th on Season of Mist. The album has 10 tracks, 56 minutes in length, and this is the band's sixth full-length studio album. They are an American metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, at first glance, the album appears very balanced, cohesive, but even straightforward. There's a sense of heaviness that permeates throughout this album that streamlines the record, and it makes the album feel a lot more to the point. It makes the album feel a lot simpler, but normally heaviness does that to a record. It almost eliminates a little bit more of the texture that the album could have and makes the songs a little bit more quicker to where they want to go. So it makes the overall record journey, the overall path that the album puts forward, feel a lot more streamlined. That is not to say that you don't have ebbs and flows, because there's still softer songs within this record, and those softer songs, the way they're put together within the track listing of the album, allows this record to have a lot of resets, which allows the album to have a lot of ebbs and flows, which makes the experience a lot more engaging all around. I enjoyed this design because it incorporates the right tracks in the right place for the album to feel like it's always fresh with every single track, and it doesn't allow the record to create pockets of repetition. As far as the sound is concerned, definitely that heavier experience is going to be something that fans will be talking about when it comes to this record. It's definitely heavier than its predecessors, and it has that as the backdrop that really dictates the direction of the sound, but also the direction of the vocals. More about that later on this review. So the sound on this album, having that heaviness, does not dilute all the technical aspects of the band. It doesn't dilute all the atmospheric aspects of the band, all the progressive aspects of the band, all of the things that this band does and does really well, which is blend a lot of genres together in order to create a sound that's very unique and very specific to them. So at the end of the day, this still sounds like an Oceans of Slumber record. It's just a record that has a lot more heaviness while still keeping a lot of nuances alive and well, a lot of sprinkled in elements to make the album still feel like it has the ability to not just move forward, upwards, downwards, but also side to side. Certain songs feel a little bit more narrow because the heaviness that they offer. Some songs feel a lot more wider because of how soft they are and all of the elements that come to the surface, either be acoustic guitars, keyboards, synths. It's an album that still has so much to offer, that it's very rich, it's very layered, but in the way that it's put together, it feels simplified. It's not an album that takes you a long time to digest or appreciate. It's an album that you're going to discover new elements with every time that you listen to it, but at the first glance, you're able to get the most out of it immediately. And that is where that simplification comes in, and I feel like the overall sense of heaviness adds to that experience, it adds to that simplification. It's an album that relies heavily on three elements: drums, keys, and guitars. When it comes to the guitar sound on this album, I thought the guitars in general were one of the main key factors of how rich and how textured the sound is. Everything from the acoustic side to the really heavy riffing allows this album to have a lot of mobility, but always keep in the forefront the guitar sound as one of the main driving forces. I would say more often than not, you're going to find the guitars on this record having an impact either on how the songs move forward or in the atmosphere that the tracks have. The mood, really setting the mood with the guitar sound. Really eclectic, but really well crafted, clear, crisp, clean, great production on this album that allows the guitars to have a little bit of a life of their own within the sound on this record. One of the other elements, the drums, I always enjoy the drum sound on an Oceans of Slumber record because I always feel like while Cammy's voice brings soul into the album, the drums are a little bit of the heartbeat of the record, and on this album is no different. The drum sound really feels like the heartbeat of the album, of the songs, heavier songs, quicker heartbeat, softer, a little bit more ambient kind of tracks, allows that heartbeat to still be there, but to be a little bit more fainted. And I love that dynamic. I love that experience, and I love what those drums add on every single record from Oceans of Slumber. This one being no different from the others as far as the drum sound is concerned. or the impact of that drum sound. Now, one of the elements that surprised me a little bit more sound-wise was the keys in terms of how impactful they were. They're not always necessarily in the forefront. There are certain songs that are very key-driven. That's without a shadow of a doubt. You feel it, you can see it from the get-go. I think The Given Dream, for example, is a perfect example of a song that's heavily driven by the keys. But overall, you always hear them. The texture that they add, the nuances that they give, the atmosphere that they create, I think is one of the abilities that this record has to be heavy on one hand and still have that moodiness that we've come to expect from Oceans of Slumber. It's really the collaboration of the guitars and drums working together to create that sense of heaviness, and then having the keys on the other end adding this more blissful atmosphere. This to me was the dynamic that made this album coexist in the way that it does, and offer a heavy experience without necessarily relegating everything that the band has evolved into up to this point. Now, once you get into the vocals, to me this is actually the soft spot on the record, and not because of Cammie's performance, because she has a beautiful voice and she always carries a record extremely well. In this album, she brings her emotional delivery to the forefront, and she's really able to bring the lyrics to life with her very own approach, with her very own dynamics, and she has a very soulful voice, a very soulful delivery. And this album to me just emphasizes how good of a vocalist she is. My issue on this record vocally, more often than not, are the harsh vocals. I felt like it was too much of it, and not always blending well with the dynamics of the song, not always blending well with the vibe of the song, sometimes feeling a little bit out of place, feeling like they were a last minute addition and they're not well integrated into the overall sonic experience that the track is giving you. There are exceptions to this rule. Prayer, for example, is a song that has a lot of different style vocals, has a lot of different textures, including the harsh vocals, and I felt like on that song worked extremely well. It's a track that feels very complete. It's actually one of my favorite songs on the record. But there are so many other tracks where those harsh vocals just distort the experience that the song is giving. And then when you use them throughout the entire album, the other element that you're taking away is the element of surprise. You're taking the element of freshness. You start to repeat yourself, and not necessarily in a good way. And I felt like this album, musically, sonically, was so strong. It was like perhaps one of their best sounding records ever. But when you infuse those vocals there, I had a really hard time, making my way through them. It was really hard for me to appreciate a lot of the tracks when those vocals came in. I felt like, once again, they distorted the image of the record, and they distorted a little bit of everything that was happening around them. There's a few songs that they work perfectly, but overall they really feel out to left field as far as the overall vibe of the record. And to me, that hurts the album in general, because like I said, I cannot listen to this album and ignore such a big portion of what the album vocally is all about. And I felt like it was too much of it. I think it's something that they may have to look back at it, or look forward to it. From my perspective, I think you have an outstanding vocalist that has a very soulful voice, and anything that you add to that should add to enhance that experience, not to balance it. And on this record, I felt like it was more balancing it. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Wish. It's a song that has a very calm nature sound in terms of how it starts. It leads into a very warm vocal performance, and then as the sound increases, as the sound becomes thicker and heavier, so does the vocal intensity. It's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde approach as far as this track is concerned, because it kind of moves from one mood to another in a very quick, short period of time. This makes the song more dynamic because you're constantly getting these jolts. Vocally is a very impressive song because not only you're able to have a warm delivery in both styles, but you're able to deliver a different emotion at the same time. I also enjoyed some of the subtle underlining some of the subtle backing vocals that are underneath the vocals. And I feel like here's a perfect way of adding a spice, adding something different, but in a way that it doesn't take nothing from the primer or from the primordial, if you say, delivery, but rather enhancing it. And this track really does that well. Is a song that has a great vocal performance that leads it, and sound-wise, it grows and evolves as it progresses. Next, we have The Given Dream. This is my favorite song on the entire record. I think it's a song that adds a lot of great textures to the track. It doesn't have just one texture. It's a song that has multiple textures, and it's a song that has a very dark, at least to me, it feels like it has a very dark underbelly. That darkness is perhaps better defined by the synth sound that it has. It creates this atmosphere that expands and contracts depending on where you are within the track. The vocals soar through this song. It offers almost a sense of simplicity at times because it's very keys and vocal driven, at least for most of the song. There are some heaviness to the track that obviously comes from the guitars and drums really pushing themselves forward. But to me, the emphasis of this song is always on that dark underbelly. It's always on that synth sound, on the vocal performance, emphasizing almost this sense of despair that the track has, adding almost this not just memorizing ambiance that you're getting out of the synths and out of the vocal performance, but almost putting you into a trance, almost like going into a dream world. And that is well represented by both of those elements. Now, in that dream world, you could easily turn a dream into a nightmare, and I think that's where the heavier sections of the track are done really well in order to define that easy movement from something that feels very blissful to something that feels very dark. Last but not least, Prayer, one of the most complete songs on the record, specifically when you look at the vocal performance and having the harsh vocals, having male vocals on the track. This song is extremely rich from that standpoint because it has a lot of different tones, it has a lot of different deliveries, it has a lot of different vocal styles, and I love the ability how they were able to coexist, all of them, with each other and make the song still feel very cohesive, still feel very connected and very balanced. Like you don't lose track of where you're going. The path in front of you does not become unclear, it does not become interrupted. It's a path that is easy to find, even though the way the cobblestones are placed on that path, the patterns slightly change with each vocal performance. But it's a track that's a little bit of everything sonically as well. It's a track that is folky, it's heavy, it's progressive, it's soulful, it's everything. It's just such a rich song, both musically and vocally, and the way it's put together, extremely well crafted. I think it's one of their best songs ever. I just enjoy the way this track comes together, and for a song that has so much to offer, it feels so simple to listen to. It's so easy to digest. It's such a great track that makes itself available to the audience. This is it, Oceans of Slumber, Where Gods Fear to Speak, out September 13th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.